This is the Construction Insiders Podcast. I'm Jessica Busch, bringing you the newest trends and strategies in construction, essential to anyone in the industry. On today's episode of the Construction Insiders Podcast, we're going to change gears a bit and talk about how to retain and attract the next generation of construction professionals. Today with me, I'm sitting down with Christine Mosholder. She is Cumming Group's Chief Development Officer, a newly developed position, but one that we thought was imperative to create due to all the changes in the industry and really taking our team member development and retention seriously. Thank you for joining me today. I'd really like to dive into how you are investing in our people and our future. So thank you.
Absolutely. So this new role is super exciting for me personally because, as I always told my team, they're what gets me out of bed every day. Really important, particularly in a consulting business like we are, to take really good care of the people. So I think first and foremost, the development of the people is really about understanding who they are and what makes them tick. And that takes time. That takes a culture where people are invested in learning, in coaching, and mentoring. And people are at all different stages, and you sort of have to meet them where they are. But this new role, to me, is something that really sort of puts our money where our mouth is as far as investing in exclusively what makes us all successful, and that is our team members.
So it's an interesting role when you think about the construction industry in general. We're thinking, deadlines, technical demands, those requirements taking center stage. So how, as the people person, how do you make sure that staff development, team member development remains a top priority?
So I'm really fortunate because I grew up in the industry as a project manager on construction sites. And a lot of the learning actually happens in the field, but there are other things to complement that, right? So clearly our team members and our clients come first. And if we take care of our team members, we will take better care of our clients. But ultimately, it sort of starts from the top as far as making it a priority. Every day you're prioritizing, right? And I think by working a lot of that development, training, modeling the way into the daily routine and bringing people along with you, I think it happens somewhat organically, but then it also gets complemented with a more structured training program, coaching program, those types of things.
Which I'm sure we'll get into a bit later.
Yes.
But you just mentioned kind of your upbringing in the industry was on the ground. You were in the trenches. What have you seen over the years is really needed for a project success when we're talking about team members?
So I think the most important thing is the fit with the client and the approach to the project. Okay. And that fit is really something that happens through sort of what your approach is, what you value. And, by the time we get to, as an example, by the time we get to sort of the short list in an interview for a competitive bid situation, more than likely the 2 or 3 groups who are sitting at the table are technically competent.
Right. It's
really the fit. It's who that client is going to connect with, who that client feels they can trust on the next big project.
Yes.
And that trust then really is the overarching piece that makes the project successful long term. Because like I tell people all the time, you're building goodwill throughout the project. You really only need goodwill when things go sideways, right? Goodwill's great, but you really need it when things that you thought you had all planned out suddenly fall apart, right?
Unforeseen issues.
Exactly. And so that goodwill that you've built is really because you've shown respect and trust to the partners on the project, to the client. And that's when everybody really comes together and you have contingency plans and you're taking care of the client ultimately as a result of that relationship you've built over the course of that project.
I see. Okay. So in the construction industry, for years now, we've been talking about labor costs, all these other issues that are kind of floating around what we're just trying to do and do our job well. But when we're talking about labor, how is the industry as a whole now trying to tackle that challenge in terms of getting that qualified talent? Most importantly, then retaining the best of the best, not just the qualified. And so what have you seen that's working? What's not working?
Yeah, so I think it does start with the recruiting process.
Okay.
And as far as that recruiting and onboarding, it's really important that the folks you're talking to recruit for your team understand what they're joining.
Right.
Right? So you want to make it really clear the type of organization you are, what you value, the types of people they're going to be working with, so that there are no surprise, and the transparency and respect for each other. Mm-hmm. It helps recruit people, but it also shows there's no surprises once they arrive.
Right.
They know exactly what to expect, or generally what to expect on their first day. That piece, along with then sort of the nurturing that comes along with retaining employees, is key. One thing we've talked a lot about is connecting people to purpose. And that can be multifaceted. First and foremost, you're connecting people to the purpose of your organization. Mm-hmm. And that's just not, construction project management, cost management, schedule. It's also about the values, taking care of clients, taking care of each other, the quality of the work, mm-hmm. the integrity that we need to have going into every relationship.
Right.
The other piece that's a bit more indirect as far as purpose is the types of projects we're working on, right? So I know I've worked on a lot of lab projects over the years.
Which is what we talked about last time.
It's exactly right. That's right.
Just changed gears a bit.
Exactly. So, the purpose in that case is we're not the scientists solving the next big vaccine challenge, right. But we are the people building that state-of-the-art lab, keeping people safe, making sure they have all of the equipment they need, and it's being done as expeditiously as possible to get that research online. So we do have a hand in it. We may not be actually creating the end result, but we are a piece of that solution. And I think that is kind of a cool thing to think about from a purpose perspective as well.
So we get the talent in the door. They're the best of the best in our minds. And we get on these projects, and they can be years long. Mm-hmm. Scope can change. Technology can change. How do you ensure that the team member you selected from the get-go is still the best team member throughout a project that's years long as it evolves?
So part of that is who you choose as the fit from the beginning. But I will say resiliency and sort of flexibility, particularly now with the rate that things are changing, right. Whether it's technology or conditions on a site or supply chain, all of those things, you have to be really ready to adapt and pivot at any time. And there's going to be days where that's going to feel really challenging. I think that's where you're relying on your team. We might have a bench in that particular location that can really help during some of those peaks in activity. It goes back to also caring about each other, right? And that that may get used a lot, but really the care in some days people are up, some days people are down. You need to know you have that safety net.
Right.
And I think that collaboration is really important. Again, getting to know each other really well. Same with partners, right? We may have architects, engineers, construction managers that we're relying on collectively for the success of the project. And those same behaviors and how people are treated should get extended. And that starts with us
people, as different personalities.
Exactly. Yeah.
So mentioning the component of care, really caring about your team members, and kind of translating that into then what does development in terms of keeping your staff ready for the next big thing, what does staff development look like these days, or what should it?
So I think it starts with understanding what they care about.
Okay.
And, back in like business school days, we talked a lot about managing by walking around, which probably is showing my age a little bit, because now with the hybrid workplace, that walking around needs to translate into some other creative solutions and ways you can connect with your team members, right? And it's still equally as important. It just manifests itself a little bit differently. Okay. So you might have to work a little harder to plan a coffee, right? Or you may just need to connect online in any mode of technology you can to make sure you're really checking in with people. You know, you send a quick text and just say, how was your weekend? What's going on this week? There's just a lot of change out there right now, not only in your direct workplace, but at a macro level.
Right.
There's a lot going on.
And people need support.
People need support, and you need to check in with them. And at the end of the day, people talk a lot about culture. I think culture, the word has been used, almost overused. And at the end of the day,
you're catching me smiling about you saying that word.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for me, what culture is, it's your people. And what your people care about equals your culture. Right. So if you don't know what your people care about, it should. Exactly. If you don't know what they care about because you're not in touch with them, then you really can't help nurture them going forward. The other really key piece is everybody wants to know they have a path, that someone's thinking about and working with them on their career path, right? And that might be individual contributors. It might be subject matter experts. It might be people managers. But you need to be in touch with those folks. You need to be coaching and mentoring. And that all is based in care at the end of the day.
So you're ahead of me once again. Your coaching philosophy.
Yes.
I'm assuming you've had quite an evolution over the years.
So, my coaching philosophies come from a few different places, not the least of which is coaching my children at lacrosse and soccer.
You know,
but
hey,
you learn a lot in those situations.
The do's and don'ts.
How to motivate, right? How to motivate all different types of people.
That's fair.
And again, unless you're in touch with them, you don't know what motivates them. You don't know what their stressors are. And those things change over time, right? You hope to have employees with you for many years, decades, if you can.
Right.
And so, everybody's balance changes. What's happening at home changes. And you just need to really care enough to know generally what's going on, what motivates them, what are their challenges at that point, and where do they see themselves? Sometimes they need your help in figuring that out as well.
Well, and that takes the moment to actually have a conversation with these team members. And I'm assuming they're all not pleasant conversations that you look forward to as a great coach. But what do those conversations, those difficult ones, need to look like?
Yeah, so I think some of the best skills we can help build in our team members is emotional intelligence. And that includes difficult conversations. So you have to have the courage and the candor to bring up some difficult topics, right? And you can do that in a constructive way out of a place of caring. And if it's coming from a place of caring,
and you built that relationship with that employee from the start.
Exactly. Again, that's sort of the goodwill, the trust. It still might be painful.
Sure.
But my experience is when you get to the other side, you actually have a stronger relationship. And they can choose to do what they want with the advice or the feedback. But it's really key for us to teach our team members how to have those conversations as well. Because that's what really then makes them better people managers and better project managers, frankly.
Right. So changing the subject a bit and going back to something you touched on earlier, the construction industry as a whole, we are seeing rapid growth. It seems like every day there's some sort of change or a different way to use AI or a platform solution that's coming out. Seems stressful as a team member, but how do you really balance supporting the team through that while also maintaining high performance standards?
Yeah. So First of all, you need to be empathetic to the rate of the changes that are occurring.
It's a lot.
It's a serious multiplier from even just 5 years ago. Right. So when I'm out talking to people, just doing one-on-ones and kind of doing a vibe check with people, one of the common themes is I'm exhausted from all of the different initiatives and change. Right. It could be a reorg. It could be a new technology platform. AI, like, honestly, nobody knows exactly how that's going to impact everything, right?
So we're all just guessing at this point.
Right. And almost the unknown is exhausting, right?
Fair.
So I think knowing they have people to go to is really key. And knowing that we're supporting some kind of a balance. And some days that's really hard to do because we do answer to our clients. We're consultants, right? But I think by role modeling as well, that helps them sort of see where they can go, what the future holds for them. And acknowledging I'm not the person who's necessarily going to be the innovator when it comes to technology. I love having smarter people around me. Let me rely on you for this, you for that. I don't have to be the expert in all of those things.
Right.
And that really gives other people a path, frankly, with all of the new innovations that are coming out.
So with the culture of caring and even making sure who you're hiring around you might be smarter or better at something than the actual leader to help move things along, the industry is known to be one that's pretty traditional in terms of approaches. And so when we're talking about, checking in, being people managers, really caring, having empathy, how do you really cultivate a distinct culture, I guess we can call it, that retains that top talent and you don't just get lost in the mix of a different firm?
Yeah, so I think the learning and the coaching, top to bottom, bottom to top, is key.
Okay.
I know, in our organization, the continuous process improvement, the growth, those are pillars for us. And people know that. These things are socialized. It shouldn't be a surprise to folks that these are some of the things that we support. And I think if that sort of permeates everything that we do, and again, you can have leaders and role models at every level. It doesn't have to be necessarily senior leadership. We have plenty of junior team members who are setting an amazing example and probably are better at some of the technology, pushing technology, solving some of the simple day-to-day challenges we have with a new way of looking at things. So I think the key is meeting everybody where they are, but looking for opportunity at every level in the organization.
So my mind just kind of jumped to cohesive culture as a company, but knowing that, us as a firm, we specialize hospitality, manufacturing, life science, you name it, education. So how do you maintain that cohesive culture or build on it, but still develop subject matter experts as the firm scales? Like, how do we maintain that balance, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, so I think the values are what holds everybody together. So you have a common set of values that everybody is socialized with, is living.
Okay.
And then what you have is how it manifests itself in these different, whether it's in sectors, in regions, geographically, people may live those values a little bit differently in one area than another. But at the end of the day, those values are what hold people together, and that behavior holds people together. I think whether it's a subject matter expert or a people manager or an individual contributor, all of these people have a role and value to the greater community. I also think people are looking for community.
Yeah.
And when we have scaled rapidly, those subsets, those smaller communities, whether it's a community that's rallied around a sector or a service or a particular geography, it's important that people feel part of some of those smaller communities and don't feel like they got lost in the larger organization. Now that, we're international, that can happen, right?
Well, and you don't want them lost. And it's also, the trust, right? So it's critical not only just in personal relationships, it's also critical on the job site. It's critical with the client. How, as a firm like ours scales, how do you build and maintain that trust from the top down? How does that even translate to our client relationships, right?
So emotional intelligence has always been important, but I'm like more acutely aware of it now. And maybe it's just maturing in a new role, but emotional intelligence is as important as the technical aspects of what we do every day. And so that applies to not only managing our people, but our client relationships, our partner relationships. And it goes back to understanding what makes people tick. What do they care about? How do they approach problem solving? How do they approach conflicts, right?
Those soft skills.
Yes. And that's something that in my new role, really important to help managers gain those skills and be confident about coaching and the soft skills, right? The conflict resolution in our role, we're kind of like the hub, and we're mediating a lot of things every day.
Every day.
Every day. And it can be really stressful.
Right.
And so having some good tips and techniques around conflict resolution, providing constructive feedback, some of those difficult conversations, I think makes people, first of all, do their job better.
Yes.
But also feel better when they go home at night saying, you know what, I did that. I do hard things. Exactly.
So to change gears on you, another topic we're seeing brought up in the construction industry a lot as a lot of leadership is looking to move on into their, second career, retirement, get a sailboat, what have you. A lot of construction firms are struggling with succession planning. So what are your kind of thoughts on that approach to this challenge, and what strategies are key?
It's a really common theme right now, given people are sort of aging out or just choosing to retire at this stage. So I think it's not something you can think about 3 months before the person's choosing to leave. Right. So you need to be in touch with sort of what people's timelines are, but you also need to be identifying those leaders and the high potential people managers early in the process. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be a people manager. It can be an individual contributor as well. But you need to identify those folks. You need to be on the lookout for sort of key behaviors. You need to reward those key behaviors because that's what keeps people on the team. Exactly. And then they're being acknowledged, right? So that's something we talk a lot about. There's the added challenge, depending on the structure of your organization, where you're growing these folks organically. You're also potentially acquiring new companies that have a great bench of high performers.
And looking out for that angle as well.
Exactly. And sort of seeing where they could land 5 years from now is really key. And teaching other managers to be on the same lookout for the future. Not what's right in front of us, but
what are our needs going to be in 5, 10 years as a firm. So for our listeners, before we wrap up, if you were to look ahead, just kind of from what you know and what you're keeping your eye on, what would you say would be the most critical factors in terms of attracting and retaining this next generation of construction professionals?
I think you need to just really focus on what people care about. And I think people want to know they're part of something bigger, that there's a bigger purpose, but that people are also looking out for their specific path. Right. So it's individual, but it's also that bigger sense of community. And sometimes that's like threading the needle, depending on the day and the week and the clients they're working with, the accounts. So I go back to the emotional intelligence, really key. to be able to pick up on those things
Right.
and bring people along. So they're going to be the next round of coaches, and that learning environment just continues. I think the continuous process improvement, people want to be part of something that's growing.
Yes.
They may not always be on the exact projects they want to be on, but as an organization, we need to ensure they feel that we're supporting them and we're looking out for their future.
Security and motivation.
Yeah, well, right now it's tough because there's so many things that are destabilizing that if we can provide some stability and security, people want that.
Right. That's a major benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. I won't keep you any longer. I know you got a jet, but once again, thank you. Always
Of course. Anytime.
I'm sure. Well, don't say that because I will come knocking. So thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
And we'll talk soon.
Thank you for joining us for the Construction Insiders podcast. You can continue the conversation by leaving a comment, asking a question, or participating in our poll. You can also visit us at cumming-group.com for more great resources from the most trusted team in the built environment. And don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on our latest episodes.